Prohibition Treaty and also the first meeting of states parties to the landmark treaty on the provision of nuclear weapons, scheduled to take place within the first quarter of 2022. Nigeria regards these upcoming events as important steps towards realization of a world free of nuclear weapons. We are therefore supportive of any diplomatic efforts in this direction. We hope that the upcoming Nuclear Prohibition Treaty Review Conference would lead to a successful outcome that will facilitate the nuclearization of the world. We will do our part to ensure such an outcome. Mr. President, terrorism continues to dominate security discourse worldwide. In Nigeria, Boko Haram, terrorist group, though fragmented by internal strife and weakened by our defense forces, is still active and preying on soft targets. Nigeria will continue to work closely with United Nations counter-terrorism bodies and entities with a view to bringing this scourge to an end. Nigeria has spared no effort in addressing the challenges of terrorism posed by the activities of Boko Haram in northeast Nigeria, the Lake Chad region, as well as banditry in the northwest and north central. Mr. President, the impact of climate change is already with us in Nigeria, manifesting in various ways: conflict trigger, food insecurity, drying up of lakes, loss of livelihood, and youth migration, among others. The trend is the same in many other countries that are threatened by forest fires, rising seas, drought, and desertification. As leaders, we must create inclusive and gender-sensitive policies that address all issues connected to climate action for mitigation and resilience. This is why we are working on a transition to low-carbon economy consistent with achieving the Paris Climate Agreement on the Sustainable Development Goals. Mr. President, combating illicit financial flows and ensuring the recovery and return of illicitly acquired assets have the potential to provide resources in the immediate term for financing development in the area of COVID-19 pandemic and beyond. It drives national governments of resources needed to provide adequate and meaningful sources of livelihood for their citizens. The latter gives rise to more irregular migration patterns and unwholesome consequences for interstate and human relations. Mr. President, the issue of debt, we have seen that developing countries have been faced with unsustainable debt burdens even before the pandemic. The COVID-19 pandemic has increased the risk of a new wave of deepening debt where vital public financial resources are allocated to external debt servicing and payments at the expense of domestic health and financing for critical development needs. Therefore, there is an urgent need to consider expansion and extension of debt service suspension initiative to include all these developed countries and small island developing states facing fiscal and liquidity challenges. Mr. President, Nigeria reaffirms that international trade is an engine for development and sustained economic growth, as well as global eradication of poverty. We therefore call for the reform agenda that will engender better recovery from this crisis, build resilience to future shocks, and pursue transformative development strategies that can deliver the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. Mr. President, the global food system has, in recent times, been impacted by several factors, such as population growth, availability and accessibility of arable land and water resources, climate change, and loss of biodiversity. Climate change and unpredictable shocks, such as the current global pandemic, further exacerbate vulnerabilities in the global food system, requiring the United Nations urgent attention. Mr. President, Nigeria has been steadfast in safeguarding human rights, including the advancement of women, the protection of children, the protection of the rights of people living with disabilities, the treatment of migrants, refugees, returnees, and displaced persons, as well as the promotion of fundamental freedoms through all legitimate means. In this regard, my delegation recommends the positive example of leaders like Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern of New Zealand. The recent rise in hate-related crimes globally underscores the urgent need to continue our engagement about racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and other related intolerance. It is sad to note that the issue of racism remains alive globally. We are beginning to forget our affirmation of the inherent dignity and the equal and inalienable rights of every individual as enshrined in the United Nations Charter. No society can claim to be free or just if it is deprived of any one of these rights. Today, racism drives hate crimes and institutional discrimination. In all this, Africans and people of African descent are among the major victims. I am confident that this forum will make significant impact in the quest to end race-related vices and injustice. Mr. President, no reform of the United Nations system is more urgent than that of Security Council. Stakeholders around the world are asking how such power could be concentrated in scant representation. The governmental negotiations have taken too long, some 15 years. We must avoid going in circles. Consensus has been achieved in some of the elements of this reform, especially that of the representation of Africa on the basis of the El-Zuwaini Consensus and the Sartre Declaration. It is unreasonable to expect unanimity in this matter. Mr. President, our organization is at the peak of the multilateral system. It is also the preeminent body for solving our current and emerging challenges and for developing norms that are protective of us all. In the current moment, hope for this is dependent on how we assist each other to get COVID-19 out of all countries, regardless of their classification. We can do and we must do. In this regard, let me close my statement by paying special tribute to a great and humane internationalist and an exemplary practitioner of multilateral cooperation. I am speaking of Chancellor Angela Merkel of the Federal Republic of Germany as she exits the stage we wish her well. Thank you.